Hi everybody, good evening. Welcome back. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate that when those who joined me earlier, those who were able to, and obviously appreciate anyone who's joining me now. Today, I'm just wanting to concentrate, excuse me, all about techniques. So, if there are some things that you want to learn, if there's a technique that you want, mention it in the comment and I will try to get to it. We are going to be using products from the Botanical prints product, Medley. And I'm going to show you the catalog photo real quick because you do get the stamp set, you get the dies, you get pretty much everything that's pictured here. You get all these little bees. These are fantastic. Aren't these great? These little metal copper bees. You get the ribbon. You get a couple sheets of labels. You get 4 of these, 2 of each of these prints with these fantastic die cutouts. You get the dies that go with it. It's just a fantastic medley, and it's been fun at making some projects with this today. So in my earlier video, I made these 3 cards. We worked on some backgrounds and different things. So you can always go back and watch that video later if you want to. But now, I kind of want to do a couple of obviously different techniques than what we used earlier. Maybe some of it's a little bit similar, but still a little bit different. So I'm going to get this out of the way. And we're going to start with maybe just a piece of this designer series paper, which I absolutely love. This designer series paper, I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but I think it's fantastic. So what I want to do with this is I want to do some heat embossing on it with some copper embossing powder. Now, the thing that I want to do that's just a little bit different is I want to use a mask. And I'm not sure what mask I want to use yet, but I want to cut this paper down just so we can use it as a background. So I want to make it 4 inches by 5 1/4. And so I'm just gonna get my paper trimmer out here. I'm tried to move a lot of my stuff all over here by my desk, so some of it I might have to grab. And it's gonna be a little bit noisy, and that's okay. But I'm still going to just work on keeping everything right here. Hopefully someday I'll have a stand-up area where I can do all of my videos. And I wanna make it 5 1/4, and I need to bring it to this end to do that because that's where I can see the measurement. So now this will be the standard size background, which is kind of what I use when I'm just using a 5 1/2 by 4 1/4 inch card. Get my thing back over here. Actually, I even brought out a bowl of soapy water to use when I'm cleaning stuff up, so I don't have to worry about things getting dried up. Okay, so because I want to use one of these masks, I just need to decide where I want to have my pattern and what pattern I want. Do I want some bricks going up do I want just these little diamonds? Now these are the pattern party masks, and I also have some other masks here too somewhere. Of course, they're all over my desk right now, so who knows? Hi, Linda, how are you? But let's use this one. Let's use this little diamond pattern. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my Versamark, and I've already re-inked it because it really needed some re-inking. I'm going to get my tray out. I'm gonna use my embossing buddy. Now, when you use your embossing buddy, you rub it over your paper, and then that helps keep the Stampin' Powder from sticking where you don't want it. So it keeps your paper from being staticky, basically. So I'm gonna take this mask, and I just wanna do some down on this right-hand corner. So I'm gonna flip that Versamark over, and I'm just gonna kind of go across this like so, and just kind of randomly put that on there. And then I'm gonna toss that over in my soapy water that I have set aside. And then we'll just sprinkle this on here and see what we get. Now this is something I've never done before, but I've seen it in catalogs and different things. And now that looks kind of neat how it went through. Now it's not exactly perfect because we just used the stamping pad, I'm not sure how well Versamark would actually work if I was just using sponging it on. I don't know, it might sponge on really well, but I'm not sure because I've never tried it. So maybe we'll have to give that a shot in a minute and see how that works. I'm not sure how well it would stick to a sponge. So once we have it on there, I've got my lid back on my Versamark, or my Versamark and my embossing powder. So we're just going to heat this up and get this copper embossed background done on this paper. Now, I'm trying to show you just a few different techniques, and obviously this is a little bit different than anything I've ever done because I've never just used my Versamark pad just to go through a mask like that. I've always just used a stamp and then stamp on my paper and then emboss that. So this is totally new. And once your heat gun is nice and hot, it really doesn't take long, but you can see that copper embossing powder melt on there. It's fantastic. I love that look of the embossing powder when it melts. It's like so satisfying. So there we go. So now we have that, and it gives you that raised embossed look on there. I think that's a fantastic little practice. Although I think I might need to heat it just a little bit more right there. Let me see if that will melt that little spot right there I didn't get. And yes, it will. I just didn't get it quite melted all the way. It was a little bit darker than everything else. You might not have been able to see it on camera, but I could see it from here. So, all right. So that's a fantastic little thing to use. Now that would also be great to use, even it would be fun with like something larger like this. Maybe we could try that. Let's see what we get. Let's grab another piece of that designer series paper. This is that same pattern, but let's use the back of it. And I'm not even gonna cut it down before we try this because this is gonna be quite a big image. So I'm just not even sure how this is gonna turn out, but I say we give it a shot. What's the worst that can happen, right? We use a little bit of Versamark and a little bit of extra embossing powder and we don't get the exact thing that we want. So we're just gonna take that pad, and of course you gotta really hold your stuff down here because it really sticks to that mask when you lift that mask up. So you really gotta hold that mask down when you do this. All right, let's hit with that with some of that copper embossing powder. And then we'll heat that up and see what we get. Hopefully, oh, look at that, it's beautiful. There's one little extra spot right there. But all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a paintbrush. Sorry for reaching across the photo here, or across the screen. I'm gonna take a paintbrush and just get that off from there. Let me set this aside because I don't wanna spill that everywhere. And then I'm just gonna get that heat gun again and we'll just heat that up and melt it. Now, what's fantastic about this is when you can see it, and I'm gonna try to hold it up a little bit so hopefully you can see it better as it melts. How it changes color as it heats up. Now, you don't wanna get your fingers too close to this because it's really hot if you've never used the heat gun, just so you know. But look at how it turns from that dark color to that nice pretty copper color as it's melted. Let's flip the paper up. Hopefully you can see that. I know it's kind of hard to tell, but it kind of warps your paper a little bit too, just from the heat. But that's not a big deal because once we use it as a background, it'll flatten out because we'll be gluing it down or using our snail adhesive to adhere it down. Look at that, how awesome is that? So we just took this paper that was just black and white and we end up with this fantastic embossed medallion on it just by using one of those masks and using our Versamark pad to Versamark it up and then add some copper embossing powder. So I'm going to cut this off because we're going to use this as a background as well, because we might as well use this stuff while we've got it made. And so we'll make some cards. So I'm going to be asking for suggestions if you have any suggestions on how to use these with this paper, or if there's another technique that you want to learn while I'm working on techniques, let me know. And I will hopefully be able to do that while we're doing this video. All right, so we want to make this 5 1/4. So I have to move this to the top up here just because that's where I can see that measurement better. All right, so there's our second background. So we have 2 backgrounds, both the same technique, but different because obviously different patterns, different things. Now I put this in soapy water and I just washed it off to get that Versamark off from it. I just brought like a bowl out here so I would have soapy water so we could reuse these if we want to, and I'm not waiting till later. Still a little bit sticky, but not too bad. Much better than it was before I put it in the soapy water, that's for sure. All right, we'll just let those dry now. And let's go ahead and pull out maybe some of that embossing paste again that I used earlier, and we could do something with that. We could also use, actually, I've got some watercolor paper, and I wanted to do something with that because we didn't do any watercoloring earlier. So let's do some watercoloring. Have you watercolored before? Have you created any projects with watercoloring? Now, I've got lots of scraps here. So I'm going to pull some of my scraps out because I want to stamp and emboss, and then I also want to do some just as a background. So what colors would you like me to use? Now, what comes, the colors that coordinate with this Botanical prints are Crushed Curry, Pretty Peacock, and Terracotta Tile. Are there any that you want to see me watercolor with? If there are, let me know. Otherwise, I'll be choosing in just a second. Let's pull out our images from this stamp set. And again, I'm going to have to grab that embossing because we're going to emboss some of this. So what I do after, I always keep a piece of paper in here. And if you don't have one of these trays, you can just use, obviously just have paper, set aside whatever you want to use. But I always try to have a piece of paper so then I can put everything, you know, all of it back in there. So just grab your watercolor paper, and I want to stamp both of these fruit images. And I might actually stamp all 3 of the fruit images. You can't see where I've stamped, but I did just stamp that in the Versamark. And then there is a 3rd leafy image that will stamp as well. And then we're going to cover those with that copper embossing powder. If you haven't watercolored over something that has been embossed, this is obviously a new technique for you, but it's also a really fun technique because you don't have to worry about your image washing away or whatever. You can keep that shiny embossed look behind your image. So I think it's awesome. All right. Let's go ahead and heat that up. I know, 3rd thing we're embossing already tonight, right? With the heat embossing anyway. And you can see that watercolor paper even curls too, even though it's thicker. Once your gun is good and hot, your heat gun, then all of that will start to melt. Sometimes it takes a few seconds for it to heat up, and then you can get everything melted. It doesn't take that long. It is a fun technique to use. I don't heat emboss as much as I should, and so this is kind of getting me into the groove again, doing this technique video tonight, so you can see how to do this and some of the fun things that you can do with it once you've got everything embossed. So to do watercoloring on this is super, super easy. Now, we can watercolor all the leaves separate. We can watercolor a solid color. It really doesn't matter. I'm gonna leave that up to you. So you let me know how you want me to watercolor it. We've got, obviously, Old Olive also coordinates with this. So we'll probably do some with Old Olive. Make sure I don't have any embossing powder on here. So we can do some with Old Olive. Now, also, if you want to watercolor without doing heat embossing, which is what I want to do for this background piece, is you want to use StazOn ink. So StazOn is good for watercoloring. It is good for coloring with ink refills. Any of that kind of stuff that you want to do, StazOn is perfect for this. So I would like to maybe just make a quick background using this one. And I might even just not even a full background, but just a couple of images on here that we're going to watercolor. Because I think that would be actually kind of cute just to have that, and then we could add our sentiment on later. Now, StazOn is not an ink that you want to use with your photopolymer stamps. So if you have the clear see-through stamps, StazOn is not a good one to use with that. And as you can see, using just the chamois doesn't work to get that StazOn ink off. You have to use a StazOn cleaner. So I always use the StazOn cleaner, and then I just wipe it off with a baby wipe. And it gets everything off. And then once I've done that, then I will go back and go use this chamois to wipe it off again. And then you have everything off in there. Perfect. So just a little hint for that. Always use the StazOn cleaner. Will get that off. Now, if you use the StazOn cleaner and the StazOn ink on your photopolymer stamps, it gets it a little bit sticky, and you don't want that stickiness. So it's just not good for those stamps. All right, so we're going to use the aqua painters. If you haven't used the aqua painters, they are these brushes that you fill with water, and then the water comes out the tip, and you can control how much or how little comes out just by squeezing it. You can rinse your brush tip, and once it runs clear, then obviously this is clean. Now, I'm not going to dip it directly onto that, but I'm going to take my clear block, dip my clear block on it, and then I'm just going to bring my ink up on the tip of the brush. And obviously, the wetter your brush is, the lighter your color will be on your watercolored image. So it's always good to dry your brush off a little bit, just because it will take a little bit of time to dry. So if you dry your brush off frequently, you know, kind of dab it, then obviously it's not as wet, so it's going to dry faster. I mean, I'm pretty sure I didn't have to say that, but just so you know. I'm just going to do the branch with the Old Olive as well, because I think that will be all right with this image. And you don't have to do every part of the branch. Just do what you want to. Because we've already stamped it with the StazOn ink, so it's already in black, and a lot of it can't be watercolored in just because it's already pretty close to solid. I don't know if you enjoy watercoloring or coloring in general, but this is just very relaxing to me to do something like this, to create a card with the watercoloring. Especially when I've got, you know, a lot of other things going on. This is just kind of nice and relaxing just to sit down and do this watercoloring. All right, so now you can just clear your block off, and you can use a smaller block. When you do this, you didn't have to use quite as big of a block as I did, but that way I can show you exactly how this works. And then I'm going to take some Pretty Peacock, and that's what I'm going to use for the berries on this one. I think that will be really pretty with the Pretty Peacock colored berries after I just run my finger through it. And then just make sure you rinse the tip of your brush off. It's not going to be too huge of a difference going from Old Olive to the Pretty Peacock as far as the color, but if I were going maybe to crushed curry, obviously I wouldn't want that color in there to mix in with my crushed curry or whatever color. Now, if you want your colors to mix together, then do that. That's, you know, obviously it depends on what you're going for with your watercolored image. And what I do like about these aqua painters is the tip is very skinny on this. So it really makes it easy to do these tiny little berries without a problem. I think I missed a little part there with my Old Olive. I might have to go back and get some Old Olive and finish that piece up again. And now you don't have to ink it every time. You can go a little bit lighter with each berry if you want to. Just depends on what look you're looking for in your card that you're making. And since I'm wanting this to be my background, I am going to try to get every little piece of the image colored in. And that's why I need to go back for a little bit of, I'm gonna make these ones a little bit darker. Go back over them. That's another thing, you can go back over again with more ink. And as it dries, it'll be a little bit darker, which is fantastic for whatever image you're creating. So you can make your colors as light or as dark as you want with watercoloring. That's what's fantastic about it. That's what I really love about doing the watercoloring. Just wipe it off, use a wipe, put it in soapy water, whatever you want to do, however you want to get the ink off from it. Now, there's a tiny little bit of ink right here that I'm going to use for that Old Olive that I need to put back on this stem over here that I missed. So there we go. That's it. That's all I had to do because there was a little bit of ink there. I didn't have to put more on here because it will work out just perfect like that. We'll let that background dry. So now we've got 3 different backgrounds there. If there's anything you want to see, let me know. And I will go ahead and do the technique. For these 3 images, I am just going to do solid. And what I mean by that is, I guess I didn't need to really rinse off my Pretty Peacock there. Let's get some Pretty Peacock back on here. I'm going to take this image here, and I'm just going to go over the entire thing with Pretty Peacock. Now, you can, again, go as dark or as light as you want. Just keep going over it to make it darker. Just go super light if you don't want it that dark. Make sure we get that all wiped off. We'll go ahead and do some crushed curry. And we'll do the crushed curry around this image here, the one with the flowers. And once we have these done, then we can let them dry and die cut them out. The fantastic thing is that embossing that we did is going to keep that copper color shining through. So we'll have a little bit of sparkle and a little bit of the coloring that we want. All right, let's do terracotta tile for that third image. And then we'll let these dry and we'll cut them out in a minute. So once you get the images colored like this, then we can use the dyes and we can go back over them for darker color. We'll just let those dry and we'll come back and die cut them out in a few minutes. All right, so now let's try a technique with an embossing folder. If you've never used an embossing folder does what we call dry embossing, and it basically puts a pattern in your paper. So you'll be able to feel that pattern in your paper. So let's choose an embossing folder. Let's see, let's go with this one. This is the, oh my gosh, I don't even know what the name of this one is. It's neither here nor there. We're not even gonna worry about the name right now. I'm just gonna show you how to ink it up, put your paper in it, and get an inked image on your paper. But before I do that, I'm just gonna take a piece of Whisper White. I'm gonna pull my Big Shot up onto the screen so you can see it. So when you put your paper in your embossing folder, there is a line on your embossing folder. That helps you keep your image straight when it's in your cutting or die cutting machine. My die cutting machine is a Big Shot. We no longer sell these, but we will be selling a new machine starting with our new annual catalog in June, I believe. Let me grab. You have to use some different plates with this because our embossing folders are a little bit different than they used to be. So we have this purpley blue colored one. I guess it's more purple than blue. And you use just that with your Big Shot platform. And once you dry emboss it, you get that awesome pattern on your paper. So now if we wanted to ink this up, you would take, I'm going to say, we'll ink up this side. This side is raised up. So we're going to ink up this side. We're going to get a sponge. And all I'm going to do is dip it on our ink. And I think I'll do Pretty Peacock just so it'll be something we can see once we get it on there. I'm going to take that Pretty Peacock and I'm just going to run it over the embossing folder. And it's not going to be perfect because I'm not making sure that it's super dark or, you know, whatever. But just enough so we can get some color on our paper when we run it through. So we want to flip it this way because you always want the fold of your embossing folder to be what goes in first through your die cutting machine. So once we run this through, you can see on this side of the paper, we have that ink on there now. So now if we wanted to do it on the opposite side to where it's on this raised image, you would ink up this side. So we'll go ahead and do that so you can see what that looks like once we run it through. Let me see where I put my, there we go. I'm like, where's my sponge? Gotta find my sponge before I can do that. And you just gotta really get it down in those grooves. And this is super easy to wash. You just run it under warm water and it'll wash it right up. So it's not a problem with getting it clean after you've inked it. Now again, there's that line that I don't know if you can see it right now on the embossing folder, but now that I've got it in here, I'm sure you can see it. And then we'll just run this straight through again. And we will get some beautiful color on that raised image. And you can do this with any of the colors, with any of the papers, to get a fantastic color on there. Now, if you want to take some of the paper, designer series paper, and use it and run it through an embossing folder to get a pattern, you can do that as well. I'm not going to use this one because I've already inked on it, but I am going to use this one that comes from the Country Club suite, and it has an argyle pattern on it. And I'm just going to run this entire sheet through because I want to see what it looks like with that argyle pattern on it, even though we have a nice printed pattern on here. And now we just want to get that argyle pattern on there. Onto that designer series paper. Go ahead and get all of your plates out of the way. And that looks so neat. Now, designer series paper is thinner than our cardstock, so it's going to look a little bit different than if you just did cardstock. And of course, because there is already a pattern on here, it's kind of hard to see. I can see it from where I'm at, but it's got a fantastic texture to it now. So that is always an easy technique to change up your card, is to use your embossing folders. Just by adding some ink to your embossing folder, you can make your paper just stand out a little bit more. Running your designer series paper through an embossing folder, give it some texture, makes for a fantastic card. All right, so let's cut these out with our dies. They're still a little wet. Let's wait a few minutes. Let's go ahead and use this. Are there any techniques that you all would like to see that I haven't done? That might be something fun to do that you've been thinking about and just haven't done yet. We could do, I already did some backgrounds earlier using all of these wonderful things. Maybe we could use this and make a little bit of a sponged background on here. We're going to flip it over to this side though. And let's use some terracotta tile. We'll add a little bit of sponging to this with our terracotta tile sponge that we used earlier. And the reason I'm doing this on the back of this is because I kind of want to use this later, and so I don't want to ink up this other side. We can always add a little bit at the top. This is always a fun way to add background without adding layers. So you're adding more background to your paper, but you're not adding an extra layer. So it doesn't make your card any thicker, but it adds a little bit of texture and a little bit of color to it. That looks really cute like that. And then we can still use this with this side if we want to. Now that we have that background done, we have a background done here. We have this fantastic background done. I'm gonna pull up my video again, see if, because sometimes my comments have not been coming through today, so I just wanna make sure if anyone's commenting, and if they're on, I know they're here. So if you're here, let me know, say hi. Give me some ideas for some techniques that you would like to learn. I've got so much stuff on my desk right now. We can totally do some fun techniques. I'm gonna pull that big shot out again, and we'll go ahead and die cut these out real quick while I've got the die cut machine here. And now the die cut machine that I'm using is the Big Shot. when we come out with a new machine, I will be able to use that one and show you. If you already have a Big Shot, you know how fantastic this machine is. You have to, for die cutting on this, you have to use your Big Shot platform, then your thin die adapter, and then add one of your clear plates. And now we can die cut all three of these at the same time because they are small enough. So we're just going to get into our dies here. These are the Botanical print dies that come with the Botanical print medley. And actually I might have to do it in 2 tries because I got these 2 images kind of close together on this side, but no big deal. 2 runs through the Big Shot is nothing major. We can totally do that. It's not going to slow us down at all. Just make sure you line your dies up. Now you can use washi tape and tape them down if you want to. I don't tape them down. I usually just hold my plate down because I find when I tape them down, I end up, the tape gets so stuck for me that I don't like the way it sticks so hard to my dies, and then I have to kind of peel it off my dies. So I try not to tape them down unless I really, really have to. Aren't those pretty? Look at those once you get them cut out. Now you can always cut them out before you watercolor them as well, but I did not. I watercolored them first, then die cut them out. Let's grab that third die that goes with this floral image and we'll die cut this one out, and then we'll be done with our die cutting and we can maybe start putting something together. I would love some ideas from someone if they could chime in and let me know what they would like for me to do. It would be fantastic because sometimes my brain's a little fried when I get going and I might forget something, and you might have a fantastic technique you would like me to teach or that you have seen that you want to learn or get a refresher on. And it's not popping in my brain right now, but it might be in yours. So go ahead and give me some suggestions. I would love it. So once you have all of those cut out, we can use those on our cards that we have, that we are getting ready to put together. If you watched my video earlier, you saw I did some other backgrounds and some other cards. And because I was just trying to concentrate a little bit on techniques today for everyone, just for something a little bit different, and not have a finished project in mind, because I really don't have a finished project in mind right now. I'm just kind of going with the flow, so that's why I'm asking for your hints and your suggestions. All right, so for this card, I'm thinking maybe we might need to cut it down just a little bit more. Now, what I have it at right now is 4 1/4, or 4 by 5 1/4. And I'm thinking maybe we need to cut it down to 3 3/4 by 5, just so we can put maybe some poppy or pretty peacock as the background. So I'm going to cut from this side because I don't want to cut off anywhere where we've already got that little stamped image. So I want to make it 3 3/4. And what's fun about this piece is we could still use this piece for something else if we want to. And then we are going to make it 5 inches. And then again, we have this piece at the top that we can use for something else. Then let's go ahead and cut a piece of pretty peacock for our background, I think. And we want that to be 4 inches by 5 1/4. So we've got 4. Five and a quarter. What do you think? I think that's kind of perfect like that. I think that'll be a great background. And now, what color should we do the actual card? Because we're using the watercolor paper, it's more of a very vanilla color, so maybe we should use very vanilla thick. I think that would be good behind it. Let me pull a sheet of that out and let's see how that looks. I think that would be pretty. So let's get that paper trimmer out again, and we will make this 4 1/4, and then we're gonna score it at 5 1/2 using the scoring blade. Now this is very vanilla thick, so it's a little bit thicker than regular berry vanilla. And then we can put our layers on here. Now I don't think we necessarily need either of any of these things on there, but I would like to put a sentiment. And do we want it to be on a layer of something? Do we want to add some designer series paper here, maybe across the front? Maybe make it obviously not that wide, but maybe just put something across the front here. Let's see which other, we also have this print, which I think is a little too big of a print maybe for this. So I think we'll go with this print. Get that paper trimmer out again. We're just gonna be doing a lot of trimming. I need to probably just leave it sitting here for a minute. And let's maybe do just a 1-inch strip. I think 1 inch is good. And then we can cut it at, let's cut it at 4 1/4. But then from 4 1/4, let's just trim in just a little bit and make a tiny little banner. Not as deep of a banner as, like, let's say using the banner triple punch, but we'll just make a tiny little banner. Just bring it in just a little bit. Hi Sherry, how are you? So we'll just make a little banner on there. And then that can go across the front right there, and then we can add a sentiment onto that. Maybe not necessarily directly on that. We can do some more layering. We can do whatever we want. All right, so now that we have that, none of this is stuck down yet, so we can change anything that we want. You could add maybe a little bumblebee on there. Now the sentiments that come in this stamp set are, I'm always here for you, friend, and thank you kindly. So what should we put on here? Any suggestions? Do we need a ribbon anywhere? Maybe we'll add a little piece of ribbon. This is the old olive twill ribbon. And I'm just gonna put a little angle on each end of this, and then we can stick that down, and then we can put our sentiment over top of that, I think would be great. All right, so let's make our layers. Let's go ahead and adhere these down. We'll start with that pretty peacock layer onto that very vanilla. Then we can add our watercolor paper where we did our watercoloring. And we added our background, which was easy to do using a masking technique. And we just used the back of this, which is one of the little die cuts that come in this medley. And then I think we're just gonna leave this flat as well. And then we can raise our sentiment up a little bit on this card. I'm gonna take, glue dots work fantastic for ribbon. So I'm gonna put one in the center, one toward each end. And because this is a nice skinny flat ribbon, it'll be perfect right here. And then maybe, I don't know, let's see, I do have some little die cut leaves that I used the dies for in Old Olive. We could add a couple of leaves on here maybe. we could use a piece of, let's use a piece of Very Vanilla for our sentiment, just because so it'll match the card front. And then maybe we'll do the I'm always here for you. I think that's a pretty sentiment. And we can stamp that in Pretty Peacock. I think that's a perfect color. And then I think I'm going to actually cut around this sentiment, fussy cut around it. I did that earlier and I did not like the way it turned out with the word friend, and it was just too small for the card. But this is a little bit bigger and I'm cutting a little bit bigger around it. So I think it'll be all right. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Not sure if I like that. What do you think? Any opinions? Can someone give me an opinion? Yes, no, maybe so. All right, this is a 1 inch strip. I think I need to cut it down to 3/4 because I feel like 1 inch was too wide. And then this sentiment is only about just over 1.5 inches. So let's make this 1 3/4 inches, and then let's stamp it on this and just leave it as a rectangle and see how it looks versus cutting it out. That looks much better. What do you think? 1 or 2? I think 1. I'm going to lay that on there. We've got the I'm always here for you. Now we can also take those corners, maybe just snip a little bit off each corner so they're not, so it gives it just a little bit of a ticket look, I guess, is what you would call it. I'm going to add a couple of dimensionals to the back of that as soon as I find my dimensionals, right? Always got to be something I can't find. And again, I would totally let you see my desk, but it's really quite embarrassing, to be honest with you. I've got so much stuff on here right now because I wanted to be ready in case someone came up with a technique that they wanted to learn that I haven't done yet. So if there's something you want to learn, let me know. Yes, Sherry, I agree. Number 1 is cuter, isn't it? And much better. I'm going to add these leaves. I'm just going to stick them right to that dimensional. And I think just those leaves on that side is perfect. We'll put this in the center. And there's our first card for this video. After we did that fantastic watercolored background, we sponged on it, added some designer series paper, some die cuts, and that's card number 1. Set that one aside, and let's come up with something for this card. Now we have all of these die cuts here that we watercolored. I have doubles actually because I did some before the video in case we need them. I also have these die cuts when I did before I started the video that I used the die cuts in this kit for as well. And then we have a third card. So we've got 2 more cards to put together. This one, I love how we were able to get that entire huge embossed background on. Do we want that to the right or to the top? We are probably going to use, we may have to cut some of this off just because it's kind of big, and I want to add some designer series paper onto this one as well. I mean, this is already designer series paper, but we want another color on this, I think. And I'm thinking if we add, let's see what we've got. Let's see if we've got which looks better, because we've already got Pretty Peacock already. So crushed curry or terracotta tile. What do you think? Crushed curry or terracotta tile? Let me grab the other 2 patterns that are in these colors. So we have this other pattern, it has a little bit less terracotta tile. And then this other pattern with the lemons is the halved lemons. I kind of like both of these that are already here better. Which would we like? What do you think? And if we add something into it, do we want to go with, I don't even know what I want to go with. Anybody have any suggestions? Which paper to go with this? Number 1 or number 2? I'm going to give you all a few seconds to decide. I'm going to lay those there while you decide number 1 or number 2. And I'm going to get some Whisper White cardstock because I already have some of that readily cut. Whisper White seems to be the one that I have readily cut the most often. And we'll give that a fold in half. That will be our background for this. I'm going to put this one off to the side. We've got all these other little pieces we can use. So what do you all think? Number 2, number 1. I'm gonna choose on my own in just a minute. I think I'm just gonna do a strip down the side, and I kind of like this medallion. I'm not sure if I want it at the top or at the bottom right. I kind of like it at the bottom right. I think it looks prettier that way. So maybe we'll take this paper right here and we will make, let me see, how wide of a strip do we want? Let's go with a 1.5 inch strip. And then we will cut it at 5.5, so it will be just the length of the card. And then we'll actually go up the card like this on this side, on the left side. And then we can add in some of these other little elements if we want to. They don't have to be terracotta tile. We could add crushed curry or pretty peacock, just to give a little bit of extra color. Actually, that looks kind of cute with the pretty peacock right there. Maybe we'll add some pretty peacock elements just to this little piece. And maybe we'll make it the same length as, so we'll bring it down to 5.25. Let's bring it down to 5.25. So it's the exact same length. All right, let's start with our first layer. We'll get that on there. And now, had I made this just a little bit smaller, now we still could do it, but I'm just gonna leave white as our background. We could have added another color as our background or another designer series paper as the background. I'm just gonna make this one flat as well. And we're just going over a little bit to the left here. But now that it is the same length as our first piece of designer series paper, when we put our little pretty peacock medallions on here, it's just gonna look a little bit cuter. I'm dropping stuff on the floor. All right, let's use some Tombow glue for these because they don't need a lot. They just need a little bit just to hold them down. And if you try to put the snail adhesive, which you can do it, but sometimes it gets a little bit sticky. We're gonna put one at the bottom, one at the top. And the fun thing about this designer series paper, even with all the different patterns and the 3 different colors with the pretty peacock, terracotta tile, and crushed curry, you can use them together and they turn out really pretty. So just throwing in the extra color here on this card is so nice. Just looks cute. Now we could add some more pretty peacock in here maybe. We could add, I don't know if that gives it too much. I don't know if that's too much. Let's see, maybe just a little piece. I have one that I cut apart earlier. Let me find it from my earlier video. And we can just cut a piece off from this and see how it looks. We will like lots of dimension on these cards just because they're fun, and we've got all these extra pieces and dimensions and things. So we don't want to waste any of that, right? Got to add some on there. I think that might be a little too much. we're not gonna add that on. We'll just say we did, right? We'll just pretend we added it on. I'm gonna get one of these because I would like to use one of these banners on here. And we could probably use, I know we used thank you kindly already earlier, and we've just used I'm always here for you, but we'll use thank you kindly again because I'm just trying to stick with what is in this medley. So we've got thank you kindly for this card. Now, what would we like behind this? We've got some of the leaves. We have, actually that's kind of pretty behind it because it kind of blends in with that extra copper. Let's use this piece. Let's put some dimensionals on the back of it to lift it up. We only need a couple. Don't need a lot. We'll just put it right here. Kind of at the edge of the second piece of designer series paper. And then we'll put one dimensional on the right hand side of this and just some snail adhesive on the left hand side because we want it to stick to this. We don't want to bring it up any. We have our thank you kindly. Super cute. Now, do we need a copper bee on there? Do we want a bee on there? Do we want to just leave it without a bee? I'm thinking without a bee. Now, I did have a second one of these. We could add another one of these on here somewhere, maybe. I don't know. I don't like the way that looks. So I think we're going to go with this right here as our second card. So our first card is I'm always here for you. Our second card is thank you kindly. And now we'll do our third card with this as our background. And I'm going to trim a little bit off from this one because I want to put some crushed curry behind this one, I think. So we'll make it 3 3/4 by 5. Making sure we leave all of that embossing on there. And let's get some crushed curry behind it. Now, do we want to do designer series paper or just plain crushed curry? I'm thinking plain crushed curry because that'll be perfect. I think we're going to need it 4 inches, which this is already 4 inches, and we're going to need 5 1/4. So we just got to trim a little bit off from this. And now we could even make it a little bit thinner and make it a super thin layer, or we can leave it kind of thick like this. I kind of like it a little bit thicker, so we'll leave it thicker, and then we'll use, do we want to go with terracotta tile as a background and throw all 3 colors in on this one card in large format, or is that a little too bright? Maybe not that. Maybe let's do just some, let me see, we had smoky slate earlier, which was a good one. We could do smoky slate. Let's do smoky slate for the background on this one. Or for the card base, basically. We'll use smoky slate. So we need to, it's 4 1/4 wide. We're just gonna score it at 5 1/2. Now I can kind of get that out of my way, I think. And then we'll just start with our layers. Get our layers added on, and then we can go from there and add other things to it as we go. Kind of like we did in the earlier video and in this video. If you're watching, let me know you're here so I can say hi. I'm so glad you've joined. I appreciate you watching. If you're watching this on YouTube later, I appreciate that as well. Just make sure you head over to my Stampin' with Valerie page on Facebook and like it, and vice versa. Go to youtube.com/Stampin' with Valerie Smith to like my YouTube page. That would be fantastic. We can add in Not sure if I like that. Any comments, anyone suggestions, thoughts, hints, tips, tricks? We've got a couple of these we can use. We can also add in, maybe we'll add in one of our crushed curry ones. Take these off. We've got these two. Let's layer those just like that. I kind of like the way that looks. Put a dimensional, kind of hold them together. And then a couple dimensionals on the back. And probably just grab my scissors and do a little piece here on this over here. I'm not gonna stick it down yet, I'm just gonna stick it on here. Let's see what we've got. We've got some other little pieces over here that maybe we can add in. We can add this in as just a white piece, or we can flip it around and do the pretty peacock. It kind of blends in with the pretty peacock, so let's flip it around maybe again as the white piece. We'll put it on this side, I think. Flip it around this way. I know it looks exactly the same, but there was a little divot in it that just gave it a little bit something different. We've got that piece. We could actually add, we have this little piece from the card earlier. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, so go ahead and give me suggestions. I will take any suggestions. And then we could use one of these. We definitely need to use Friend for this one, but I don't want to use Pretty Peacock because we've used that for the last two. So let's do the I'm Always Here for You, Friend, and let's use some terracotta tile. I think that will be pretty with this card. We'll see how it turns out. If we don't like it, we'll use something else. It's a little bit crooked. Not horribly crooked, but a little bit crooked. We're just gonna go with it because, well, actually, you know what? No, we have extra labels. Let's stamp it again. Let's try it again. Let's do Friend first, because that's where I kind of went crooked. Sorry if my face is in the screen. I'm not trying to get in the shot. I'm just trying to make sure I get this straight. Much better. That turned out much better. All right. We'll add that. We can add some of the, I actually have one here that I haven't colored. We could add that one in. That kind of makes it look cute. Do we want it down the center or off to the side? What do y'all think? Down the center. Off to the right. Throw out some suggestions, everyone. I need some suggestions. Maybe off to the left like that. All right. I'm going to give you a few seconds to see if anyone has a suggestion for me. If not, I am going to leave it just like that. I'm going to get some Tombow glue on the back of this piece. Just going to put a few dots down the center area, because that will definitely hold it down. Get that little latticey piece right there. Perfect. We have our sentiment. We have our little pieces here that are going to be raised up. We'll get all the backings off from these. Now these are all heat embossed on watercolor paper. And then we watercolored the images, except there's one I didn't. That was one that I cut out earlier and left blank. Wasn't sure if we were going to use it for anything, but it kind of looks good with this card. So we're going to add that on. We've got I'm Always Here for You, Friend, and So what I'm going to do, instead of sticking dimensionals on the back of this, I'm just going to put a couple of dimensionals right here. That will hold this on here, but I'm going to add a little bit of snail adhesive at the top because that will stick to these die cuts to help keep it on as well. And I would kind of really like to put a bee on this one, actually. Let's add a little bumblebee on here. Where should we put our little bumblebee? Off to the left. I think the left looks pretty cute. We'll use a glue dot for that little bumblebee. And then scoop it up with the take your pick tool. And I don't think, I'm not even gonna put it on, I'm gonna put it just right here on the card itself. I think that looks cute. And so then we've got our third card for this evening. We have thank you kindly, I'm always here for you, and I'm always here for you, friend. So thank you for joining me for tonight's technique video and helping me put together these cards. I appreciate you watching my videos and hanging out with me for a little while. I hope you're having a great evening, and I hope you have a great day tomorrow. Bye.